We will start in Gaza because that's the point of these attacks in Lebanon, is to split off, as Rokhaya said, to split off the Gaza front and the Lebanon front, and to try to weaken Gaza's negotiation position by splitting off the more powerful Hezbollah front in the north. So it has been a busy week, and just we'll throw up the couple maps here. Again, we're looking at Israeli focus on the Netzarim corridor and Rafah, the Netzarim corridor in the center. They removed the 98th Division. This was the Raider Division that we've talked about, the division that raided Shifa Hospital and Nasser Hospital. It's the division that raided Shujaiya for the second time and the Jabalia camp for the second time. And that fighting force with their paratroopers who just got smoked in Lebanon, they've been removed. And the Israeli military doesn't have the ability to replace that kind of fighting force. And that's why they had to move that division up to the northern border to fight in the north. And they can't do those two things simultaneously. So what we're seeing in Gaza is the troops focused on the Philadelphia corridor and moving their supply routes between the border of Israel. I mean, it's not a border, but the edge of the ghetto of Gaza. Those supply routes have been targeted this week, and there's been 7 qualitative operations this week targeting Israeli forces east of Khan Yunis and east of Rafah. And we're going to take a look at those on this show today. So let's start right with the first one. This is a 3-stage ambush here that we're looking at. Ambush, the promise of victory ambush. And here we see, again, commander troop leading procedures. The Israeli military told us these guys don't exist. And here we have a commander with a closed line. His sign notes that it's the ambush promise of victory. We're seeing aerial surveillance, drone footage, what the American and Israeli military called ISTAR, intelligence, surveillance, target acquisition, and reconnaissance. And you can see this is target acquisition. They're using this drone footage to track the supply route for the Israelis down to the Philadelphia corridor. You can see they've got eyes on this corridor, eyes on the supply route, I should say, heading to the corridor. You see their armored division there, their armored battalion there with multiple tanks, multiple Namur troop carriers, multiple D9 bulldozers. Fighters get in position, and the commander was detailing this operation. He was talking about how there's going to be 3 strike groups here. We're looking at strike group number 1, who's going to target this first Merkava tank. Look at how close he is to him. We have 2 cameras on each aspect of this ambush. So you get the first Yasin strike here, dead center of the tank. No apparent interception by the trophy system, too close proximity. So that's stage 1 of the 3-part ambush. The stage 2 here is aimed at this first D9 armored bulldozer in the convoy. Again, another strike right on the cage where the commander and the navigator are in the D9 bulldozer. Again, we see it from multiple angles. They have brought this media to us for the entire war, showing us the battle that we wouldn't see otherwise. And Hezbollah will do the same. Hezbollah was the founders of these kind of operations of embedding media into your fighting. This is the 3rd D9 bulldozer, gets it in the back engine area, debilitating. We saw last week a captured drone, and here we go with a medevac coming in again to rescue injured soldiers. Maybe we could loop it around one more time because I just want to talk about some of the things that we're seeing. So promise of victory ambush here. We see a barrel chopped AK-47, Chinese AK-47, barrel chopped off for close quarters battle. So you've got a close quarters battle fighter there. You see the closed line phone in front of him. He's working on a computer connection. He's connecting it to this drone footage that's marking the route. And they've been on top of this. They say they don't exist, but they're out here running. These are not guerrilla operations in the standard sense of a ragtag guerrilla force. This is a military that has for sure taken losses. So has the Israeli military, and of course civilians take the most brunt. But we see here the fighting force in Qassam is still fighting in the exact same way that we've seen all throughout the war. They're not using different weapons. They're showing us our commanders. They're showing us their commanders ordering their troops into position. And he talks about it as 3 task force. There's 2 strike groups. So we're looking at strike group number 1 here. So you have 8, 10, 12 people involved in this ambush itself. You can see the proximity these fighters are still getting to these vehicles. This is something in South Lebanon that the Lebanese have an asset because they have much more sophisticated anti-tank weaponry. And by early reports, as we were coming on air, there's a number of Merkavas that got smoked in Lebanon too. We're probably going to have to get towed home like they were in 2006. Wouldn't be surprised to see that later on today. I expect we'll see Hezbollah footage throughout this war. So this promises a victory ambush. This is the second kill zone of the D9 armored bulldozer. These are American-made Caterpillar bulldozers that have been wreaking havoc in Rafah for 25 years. All through the Second Intifada, they committed brutal crimes with these bulldozers. Americans may remember Rachel Corrie. Rachel Corrie was defending a row of houses in Rafah that the Palestinians defended for months before that. And so we see here another medevac chopper. And just an interesting note on the medevacs. In Vietnam, medevacs, U.S. medevacs in Vietnam, they just got a congressional gold medal for their service in Vietnam. And the pilots talk about 1/3 of their flights were targeted. Their medevac flights, their marked medevac flights from Vietnam were targeted. 1/3 of them by Vietnamese guerrillas. And we're still seeing 11 months in that the principles of the war fighters in Gaza have still not changed. They are not targeting medevac helicopters that are well within their range. So we see a complex ambush in Rafah there, promises of victory ambush, troop leading procedures, commanders, military structure, using weapons that we've seen them using all through the battle. So when you're looking for indications that the group has been dismantled, you don't see any of them in the fighting. You don't see it in the field reports. The field reports have been consistent. I'll give you a sense of those as we go through these first Gaza videos. But we had significant qualitative operations all week this week since you last saw me. 7 operations, 2 complex ambushes, 2 minefields, 7 armored vehicles hit in various strikes. And then we have the constant artillery attacks on the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 corridor. So if we go to number 2 here, we're going to see 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐿 carrying out those. This is their mortar teams, again, setting up, making sure they get their angles and their distances on these maps correct. They're 11 months into this battle. They have gotten better at this. And as you'll see in the footage of this, they're landing with these 107 millimeter rocket artillery and mortar rounds. And the mortar round here for Hassan Nasrallah, immediately they're able to communicate the death of Nasrallah and say his importance. This fighter says, in the presence of the martyrdom of Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, we say, as our Secretary General, Dr. Fatih Shakaki said, blessed is the party whose Secretary General becomes a martyr, for it is a party that does not die and it is a party that is victorious. So you can see here the fighters, again, communicating with the outside world. We see him here loading a 120 millimeter round mortar bomb that's built in Gaza. These are 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐿's built mortar bombs. These are not imported through the Philadelphia corridor. Philadelphia corridor is not the oxygen for the resistance. The oxygen for the resistance is inside Gaza, and it's in their tunnel networks. And you can see a tank there in that footage. They have eyes on the tank. They have eyes on multiple positions along the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 corridor. This is the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 corridor that splits Gaza in half. A number of people on foot, another Gazans on foot, attempted to come up to the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 corridor, and the Israelis shot them out of a crowd, unarmed civilians looking to come up to the border. So Israel has declared, you can see there, that's footage of the soldiers scurrying around underneath the mortar fire there that lands. And so these fighters are immediately able to get these reports out still. Their communications haven't been impacted in any way. This report of this field report for this operation came out. The next day, we see the video, and we see it with Nasrallah, timed all within less than a 24-hour window of time. And these fighters have been able to do this all throughout the war. And this is 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐿 doing it, but all the factions have this week been involved in shelling, mortaring the Israeli positions along the Netzarim corridor. And because the Israeli military lacks this 98th Division that's taking casualties, significant casualties today in the north, I think we're going to see a downtick in operations from the Israelis, which is what we saw this week. They just switched from that to massacring civilians. And the places where civilians are at this point in the battle are in the shelters that Nora talked about. They're in the orphanage that was bombed last night as part of 100 civilians being killed. So Israel is still able to kill from the air, kill from distance, from cowardly distance. But the face-to-face fighting, as we saw last week on the videos, the fighters are saying, come fight us face-to-face. You've cleared out the population from the battlefield. People aren't living in Rafah. Rafah has been completely ethnically cleansed and destroyed. It's a massive battlefield that if the goal was to fight and defeat 𝐓𝐡𝐞, then you would go and fight in Rafah, where the fighters are of 𝐓𝐡𝐞. Thousands, many thousands of fighters, not including new recruits, are ready to fight that battle. But Israel doesn't want any part of that. They bomb from the air, they bomb from the sky, they target civilians, in the only piece of land that's left to them in the Gaza Strip, which are these schools that should be teaching children now for the second year are closed and are really difficult living conditions for the Palestinians that live in those schools at the best of times, and then to massacre them in those schools, killing entire families, 4 generations of the same family taking shelter in a school in a place that you told them to go, the Israeli military, and then they attack them there by and so their field reports, I watch Israeli field reports every day too. Their field reports from Gaza have all but stopped. Their operations in Gaza have all but stopped in the last week. The only field reports, they say, are the massacres in the school, which I've been telling you for months that the Israelis have been bragging about these massacres. They call them Hamas command centers when they're destroying families in homes like that. So consistent all along. Let's go to number 3 tomorrow, because the Popular Resistance Committees released this video on their 25th anniversary. This is Jamal Abu Samhadana, who is a senior resistance leader in the Gaza Strip and the founder of the Popular Resistance Committees, Nasser Saladin Brigades. And here we see a fighter introducing his anti-materiel sniper rifle, a 14.5 millimeter sniper rifle, larger than the 𝐓𝐴, the same size as the 𝐓𝐴 version 1, shooting a 14.5 millimeter round. You can see behind him 25th anniversary of the Nasser Saladin Brigades, who were founded as a fighting force by veteran fighters at the time of the Second Intifada. They were veteran fighters that founded the Popular Resistance Committees, and that was 25 years ago, the date. And this is the rifle they're calling their AMA. And you can see there it indicates a 14.5 round, and you can see the size of the bullets that he's firing. And they dedicated this weapon to 2 previous snipers from the Second Intifada, the Al-Arkan brothers, who were famous in the Second Intifada, were assassinated in 2006. So again, shouting out their leaders, connection to their history. So it's called the AMA here. You're looking at 14.5 by 114 millimeters. The length of the weapon is 196 centimeters. 135 of it is a barrel. It weighs 14 kilos and fires a 64-gram bullet. That's what the indications that they want you to know. And the fighter said on the 25th anniversary of the launch of the Popular Resistance Committees, this weapon was put into service at the beginning of the war. So they're not showing you this because they just put this weapon together. They're saying that they have had this weapon in service throughout the battle. And the Popular Resistance Committees were founded in Rafah. Jamal Abu Samhadana is from Rafah, and he's a senior leader of the Palestinian resistance overall, a very popular leader. When he was assassinated hundreds of thousands of people came to his funeral. His funeral march. He was a serious resistance leader in the Gaza Strip, and his fighting force, the Popular Resistance Committees, brought on action-based fighters from other parties, from other political groups in Gaza, because the Popular Resistance Committees were an action-based organization. So they attracted fighters from all factions, and Jamal Abu Samadana was made interior ministry in the early days of the Hamas, after the Hamas election. So he was put in charge of security overall in Gaza because of his legitimacy as a fighter and as a military leader. So interesting connection to that history, and to see another fighting force with these anti-materiel rifles that are critically important in this fight, because they reach up to 2 kilometers range. So it puts Israeli targets in these buffer zones when they're afraid to come in and fight. As we've seen many times, these sniper operations are taken in the buffer zone, when the soldiers are in the buffer zone believing that they're safe, or in their building with their curtains believing that they're safe. So that's a long range weapon, an anti-materiel weapon, and the Popular Resistance Committees have that. And like I said, there was a minefield operation east of Khan Yunis that I believe we're going to see video of that later today. Early reports are that the Qassam brigades are putting out a video of that. There was also a complex ambush of 2 Nammers troop carriers, a tank, and 2 D9 armored bulldozers that required a medevac the other day. Multiple Yassins versus tanks versus D9s in east of Khan Yunis. Another Merkaba east of Khan Yunis. And then in the north, in Beit Lahia, Saraya al-Quds put out a field report that said that they hit an Israeli foot force with an explosively formed penetrator barrel bomb. And they put that field report out one day before the Israelis said, we did a pinprick operation, precise operation in Beit Lahia. So the resistance is telling you the truth ahead of the Israeli military. That's still been going on. And of course, there was the promise of victory ambush that we just saw, 12 mortar operations in the Nitzarim corridor, and 2 more in the edge, on the eastern edge of Khan Yunis. So that is the resistance report for this week from Gaza.